Okay, it's about 5 seconds, maybe a little bit more. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Molly Mullen and I work for the Notre Dame Sisters in Communications. Today we're discussing recent volunteer trips to the US-Mexico border, where our guest today recently came back from volunteering. We'll discuss the current crisis at the border, what's causing it, the impacts of this, and the takeaways and actions for those of us who live more than 1,000 miles from the actual border. Today, we'll hear from 2 of our Notre Dame sisters and 2 St. Pius parishioners who recently came back from El Paso. Currently, Sister Rita Ostrie serves on the leadership team for the Notre Dame Sisters. She's ministered many years as an elementary teacher, of which over 25 of these years were on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. This time in El Paso was her 3rd volunteer experience at the border. Her reasons for going were to get a realistic picture of what is happening there. A desire to be in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are characterized as criminals and are marginalized in our cities, and to put a human face on the situation. And of course, a desire to bring caring, supportive presence to those in need. Sister Mary Kay Maher is a retired nurse practitioner with over 50 years of ministry in her area of expertise, largely with migrant populations in Texas, Colorado, Nebraska, and also in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. But she says it's not her professional background that calls her to service, but her passion and deeply rooted call to social justice. That call came recently in April to a short-term service to refugees seeking asylum at our southern border in El Paso, Texas. And we're very grateful to welcome Tom and Margaret Hoarty here, who are members of the St. Pius X Catholic Church here in Omaha, who are actively involved with assisting and mentoring refugee families right here in town. Tom is a retired attorney, and Margaret is a volunteer parish nurse at St. Pius. They volunteered at the border in 2019, and then again last month to help with the humanitarian need that they saw there. Thank you all for being here with us.
And thank you, Molly, for the opportunity for us to share our recent volunteer work at the border.
Thank you. My first question would be for Sister Rita. Sister, can you let me know what the Notre Dame Sisters relationship is or has been with immigrants to this country?
The Notre Dame Sisters have a long committed connection to working with immigrants. Our General Aid of the Czech Sisters in Europe received several requests way back in the early 1900s to send sisters to work in the United States with Czech immigrants in parishes in the Midwest. It was in 1910 that 5 sisters from Czechoslovakia arrived, and the US province was started. Over the years, the Notre Dame Sisters have provided services to individual immigrant families, immigrant students who attended Notre Dame Academy, hospitality, support and collaboration with local agencies in Omaha. It was in the 1980s that the Notre Dame Sisters initiated the Juan Diego Center for outreach to the immigrant community in Omaha. We continue to be in solidarity with immigrants today as we educate ourselves at our community weekends, listening and inviting families, immigrant families, to share their stories with us, working with groups and advocating for immigrant reform wherever we minister, and continuing to write our senators and congresspeople about various bills that need to be improved.
That is just so fascinating, Sister Rita. I love the reminder that the reason why the Notre Dame Sisters are here in Omaha was, or in America at all, was to minister to immigrants, and you've just kept doing it for over 100 years. Can I ask you about this current crisis at the US-Mexico border? How would you describe the crisis currently?
I would say it is truly a humanitarian and a spiritual crisis. People are facing life and death situations. As brothers and sisters sharing this planet, it is our obligation to try to improve the situations and the conditions. It's just the right thing to do. helping people have sustainable, safe, and peaceful places to live. Definitely, it is our Christian call and responsibility to love one another as Jesus commanded, to welcome and include the stranger, to advocate for justice in our world, and to uphold the 7 guiding principles of Catholic social justice teaching: human dignity, family concerns, community participation, solidarity with the poor, workers' rights, concern for the poor, and concern for creation. Mary Kay, would you like to add more about the border crisis? Unmute.
The border crisis is not new. We have a long history with a plethora of issues, multiple intersections, and ongoing crises since 2000. While it's an ongoing crisis, there are peaks and surges, and each one of those differ, shaped by intersectioning, intertwining realities with many influences and multifaceted circumstances and moving parts.
I just wanted to ask quickly, Tom and Margaret, did you have anything to add in terms of the crisis that you witnessed at the border before I move on to my next question with Mary Kay?
You're on mute.
All right, I'm assuming that the head shake now means that we can keep going. Okay, so my next question.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Mary Kay, okay, so you were just talking about this peak or surge. So it's not just your everyday immigration situation at the border. There happens to be something bigger going on there right now. Can you tell me what specifically makes this moment in time or this 2021 year different than what it was recently?
Well, I think each surge or peak is different. And what I see as that makes this one different is 5 major influences. And those are truly impacting shapes and influences in the present crisis. The first is a pandemic. We have a worldwide pandemic. We have a major border crisis on a worldwide pandemic, raises the stakes exponentially. The second is recent natural disasters, horrendous flooding and landslides and droughts and hurricanes, out of control wildfires, especially in Central and South America. And number 3 is the soaring number of asylum seekers. We have the highest number of persons attempting to cross the border for asylum have occurred in the last 10 years. In 2018-19, the number doubled, leaving more than 1 million cases pending in immigration courts. I think the fourth influence is unaccompanied children. And the 5th one is the MPP program, which is the Migrant Protection Protocol program that's translated to everyday languages, keep them staying in Mexico. So Rita and I have chosen to expand on 2 of these of the 5 influences. And one is unaccompanied minors or unaccompanied children. And then I'll talk about the MMP program. Rita, would you give some insight into the unaccompanied program for children?
When we went down there, we had a day of orientation, and our first presentation was by Ruben Garcia. He's the director of Annunciation House and has been working for over 38 years with the immigration situation at the border. He told us that this phenomenon of unaccompanied minors is truly horrendous and a challenging reality for children, parents, families, and it's a terrible reflection on the soul of our nation. What we have seen on TV reporting is a reality. It is very crowded. They are sleeping on mylar blankets on the floor. This is not what any of us want to see as a place for any child. But he says, my message and takeaway is these children are safe. Yes, he says, I want to see reunification. I want to see the children in beds with improved conditions. And I emphasize they are safe. They are protected from anyone entering the facilities. They're protected from being kidnapped or trafficked or murdered or raped. They're safe from torture and the coyotes and of being pulled into gangs. They don't have access to guns. They're safe from street crime, and they're unable to roam the city streets where such activities go on. And Mary Kay, can you tell us more about MPP?
Let me walk you through the very basics of the MPP program, which is the Migrant Protection Protocol Program, translated into Stay in Mexico. On November 9th of 2018, the former administration issued a presidential proclamation that for migrants who were seeking asylum. When a person crossed the southern border between entry points, this program declared that they could be returned immediately across the border into Mexico. I would hardly call this a protective program. The results of this act were horrendous. All along the Mexican US border on the side of Mexico, from Texas to California, has been a creation of makeshift camp-like cities, dirty, squalid, unsafe, unsanitary, unhealthy, crowded, and aided by mostly non-governmental volunteer groups. Asylum seekers were unable to return to their home. They were unable to get across to asylum seeking status, and so they remained on the Mexican border, anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. Imagine. Now, with the new administration, there has been some changes allowing asylum seekers to cross the border and seek asylum, which I need to interject. Seeking asylum is not a national law. This is an international law and an international right. If you're threatened, that you can seek asylum. And this is where Rita and the Hoartys and myself volunteered time. And we enter the picture here of Casa de Refugiado, where the majority asylum seekers were recipients of the MPP program. So Rita, why don't you guide us into telling us about the shelter that's called Casa de Refugiado?
The central goal of this shelter is to connect the migrants with their families or their sponsors as quickly as possible. Some have been in those camps, as Mary Kay said, for over 2 years, so they are very eager to get connected. It involved being a very welcoming spirit to assure them of their safety and their rights. They are helped with processing the necessary paperwork, simply to assist them in a very quick and short time. But it's an essential transition from entering the US to getting connected with their family and providing them with the daily necessities of shelter, food, clothing, helping them with transportation to the airport or the bus depot. And it is their families that buy their plane ticket or their bus ticket. And this typically took 2 days, 3 at the most. Even during this short time, there were opportunities to learn about them and hear their stories. So Mary Kay, do you have some stories to share?
Oh, there's so many stories to share, and each of us have a plethora of them. But the one I'm choosing to put a face on is a 22-year-old mother who was pregnant and was from Ecuador, actually, and was helped by her family to raise $3,000 to get her up to Mexico, to get her across the border. She encountered a coyote who promised and guaranteed that he would get her safely into the United States, and stole the money from her. I think she was, quote, lucky in that she wasn't murdered or raped, but she was pregnant. And so we received this woman at 22 years of age, having come from Ecuador with a 5-day-old baby who was born by C-section. And it's kind of hard to explain how one has that kind of courage to persevere with that, and with no kind of background. mean, I get lost in the airport and I travel a lot, but this is a woman who is able and strong enough to pursue her dream, to pursue her safety for her newborn. So that's one of the stories. Do you have one, Rita?
I am so impressed by their generosity and willingness just to pitch in and help wherever help is needed. After burdensome traveling or feeling so desperate, immediately at the end of a meal, they'll pick up the mop and help mop the large dining room that we eat in. Or you'll see them wiping the tables and sanitizing the tables. Or they look out for one another. If somebody looks like they're walking around looking a little lost, they will guide them to where they need to go. And even the city of El Paso, I can't tell you how many donations were dropped off, and people willingly and eagerly donate regularly, weekly, half a day of work to help and keep the shelter running and in order.
Tom and Margaret, were you also at the Casa de Refugiado?
We were.
Yes.
Do you have any particular stories of, I love the word that Mary or that Rita just used. Do you have any stories of courage that you found when you were down there?
I think the stories that Rita and Mary Kay mentioned are typical of what we saw. We saw families, mothers, fathers, bringing children from infants to teenagers. They had no belongings but the clothes on their back and the children they carried. No cars, no homes, no money, but they had courage and hope, and they were looking for a better life, trying to avoid the gang-related drug violence and poverty in their home countries.
And just as a quick interjection before we get back to Mary Kay and Rita, for those who are watching who don't know, Tom and Margaret wrote a really incredible piece for the World Herald that came out earlier this week about their experience at the border. But what I wanted to ask you just something really quick about that. And it was more about maybe what you didn't see and what people might expect. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the perceptions are of the border and maybe what was a little bit different for you?
Well, the perceptions of what is happening at the border, I think, are really influenced by the media, which hype many, many negative images. We did not see any murderers or rapists or gang members. We saw families, parents. 2 years ago, we volunteered at another shelter in El Paso, and we saw people from the same countries with the same needs, coming for the same reasons, safety for their family. And I will echo what Rita said about the people of El Paso, incredibly generous, volunteering not only their time, but supplies, food, and transportation. It was amazing.
And I don't mean to keep you. It looks like I have 1 minute left with you. Everybody who's watching can know that these people have a very busy Zoom schedule because they are off at 4 o'clock to take a Spanish lesson. Now, if you are in the St. Pius Parish and you live in Midtown Omaha, why do you think it's important to learn the Spanish language if you're so far away from the border now?
Well, 2 years ago, after we spent time in El Paso volunteering, we really felt a strong desire to learn Spanish, to bring ourselves into kinship and solidarity with the people that we had served there.
We think it's a little easier to walk along with them through wherever we encounter them in life if we can at least speak the same language. And so that's what we're trying to do.
We're trying.
Well, that's a great effort. We're so proud that we know people who are learning something new, especially a new language, because that is what absolutely keeps us connected. And I'm sure you're understanding now how absolutely difficult it is to learn a new language. And it just really gives a great perspective of the people who are coming over here who are also learning a new language.
Molly, I will just add one thing that, when we were there, the parents that we saw with their children, they loved their children very, very much. And it was really amazing to us to see what they had sacrificed for their children. They had courage, as Mary Kay said, and Rita also reflected on. They had sacrificed so much to get that far. And we really saw this love expressed in their faces as they looked at their own children and cared for them.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Please, you can look up at omaha.com or just Google it. The immigration crisis article, you could look it up under their names, Margaret and Tom Hoarty, or we've also posted it at NotreDameSisters.org. And it's just a really great piece to sum up a lot of the things that we can't sum up all right here, right now. So thank you so much for being with us. This will be posted so you can watch the rest of the interview after your Spanish lesson.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. All right, so if we can move on to Sister Mary Kay, I just wanted to finish up what we were asking about. We're talking about the situation with migrants, MPP, unaccompanied minors, but can you just quickly tell me, Sister Mary Kay, why are people coming? And is it all of the sudden, or is it always this way?
I really appreciate that question, and I thank you for it, because truly it is a question frequently that I encounter and is frequently asked. Why are they coming? Why are they coming? But I want to suggest a replacement with a different question. My question is, why are they leaving? Not why are they coming? And I believe asking the question, why are they leaving, is the core question referred to as root causes. Why are they leaving? The poverty, the hunger, the rampant violence, femicide, torture, murders, human trafficking. These are things that occur, and people will say, well, some of that occurs here. Yes, but their governments do not support any of the human rights, nor do they have any kind of a system of punishment for this criminal behavior. So I'll give you a short story about a woman from Honduras who sold something in her little street vendor on a street. She was a single mom with an 8-year-old, and the gangs came and saw her. And they told her that that was their street and that she owed them rent. And she said, I don't have money to pay rent. And they said, yes, you have to pay rent. We'll give you a week. She said, I don't know that I can get that money. And so they did come back in a week, and she didn't have the money. And they said, one more chance. We'll give you till tomorrow. If you don't get the money by tomorrow, we're taking him, meaning this 8-year-old. That woman that night packed up her backpack and with her 8-year-old walked toward the southern border of our country.
And of course, what else? You kind of,
She
when you
has
hear a
no-
story like this, you wonder, well, what else would you do? I mean, when, it's like you're saying, why are they leaving? Why are they coming? And it's, why wouldn't you? If you're saving the life of your 8-year-old and yourself,
Or
what
you're
other
selling
options
your 8-year-old to the coyotes or to the gangs. Gangs are very, very big in most of those countries, particularly Honduras. Coyotes is not a simple, which I used to think, kind of individual people who promise that they'll get them across the border. It's an organized business industry. They have publicized themselves on TV in Mexico and other countries. They give a guarantee that they will get through, a written guarantee. When they get the money, they abandon them, they kill them, or they dump them. I think another issue of why they're coming, why they're leaving, is American corporations are buying up land. There's a hydroelectric plants being set up in both Honduras and Guatemala, and they take over the land, which then diverts the water supply system for the people and also takes their land away from them. It's a curious thing to me that we have so much US government support of these corrupt government when the need is, like, for example, in Honduras, why do we have 5 military bases in a country that is about a little bit more than half the size of the state of Nebraska? Why are we militarizing another country? So we have supported them, and we have corporations who buy out things. And one place I visited, not with this particular trip, but another, was they were buying up land at a good price, but they were promising them jobs and schools and clinics and highways. So they got the money because they had good money, but then those things never came about. So then they're left without housing, schooling, healthcare, or a way of working. So those are kind of some examples of why do they leave?
Yeah, because the hardest thing that you could ever think of in your, we as Americans think, well, sure, everybody wants to come to America. But the real answer is nobody wants to leave their home and their family and their culture and their language and every road and street that they know. I mean, leaving your home country on foot is about one of the most difficult decisions that anybody could ever make.
Yes, yes.
Now, in terms of difficult decisions, now I have a good question for Sister Rita. We've been talking about everything that people have been going through just to make it to the US border. Now, I want to hear about some practical responses to this situation. And when we say, what will we do? My we, I think, would be, what do we as American citizens do, and what are our hands in this, even if we, don't live on the border? And then again, what about Catholics? As American Catholics, what are our responsibilities, either as religious or just as citizens? And Sister Rita, I know you could write a whole book on this, but if you could offer me a couple of points about what are our responsibilities or responses to this?
We have some very serious responsibilities. As a country, the United States is considered one of the wealthiest and most powerful in the world. And this carries with it a huge moral and ethical responsibility to our brothers and sisters throughout the planet. We share this cosmic home. We need to really study and learn about why our country supports these types of governments that don't honor human dignity and human rights. Because we as a nation profess that we have openness, we're welcoming, we have values of human life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It might seem overwhelming, but we have to start trying to understand how we are connected throughout our world. We are all related. And in that way, we share a responsibility to do something for that. And so for me personally, that's why I want to share the reality I saw at the border. And it is desperation fleeing such inhumane situations. And it causes us to seriously join in this advocating for more just, humane immigration laws in our country. I remember helping type out some of their papers, and I was putting information down there, and I looked down, and at the bottom it says court date October 2021. I was filling this out in the early part of May. These are people who don't speak our language, don't read our language, don't even know what city they're going to, how that city operates. And I wonder, who's going to help them remember this, help them find where they need to go? And I wonder, will they have access to a lawyer? We hear about the desperation in our law system and how unfair it is. We have a lot of work to do to really become a society that is aware of the inequalities that are part of it. And the other thing is, I realized Immigrants are not only at the border, they are right here in our state, in our city, and maybe in our neighborhoods, who knows? But they are the essential workers here in our city. They work in the meat packing plants, they're farm workers, they're roofers, they're the cleaners of buildings, motel workers. Do they have just wages? Do they have safe places of working? What does our legislature do for them? There were 2 bills this past spring that did not get passed for the workers of meatpacking plants. We have to really become invested in our brothers and sisters, which only turns to the commandments that Jesus gave us. Love one another, and our social justice commandments that we need to follow.
Thank you so much, Rita. And I think that's a really important point to make, that, you know, our food, by and large, is brought to us by new immigrants. And especially if we're talking about the state of Nebraska, and I'm sure Mary Kay could also be speaking about this for hours and hours, but our meatpacking industry, by and large, is the immigrants that we're talking about right now. So we eat and we live because these people are willing to do the jobs that other people aren't necessarily willing to do. Is that an accurate way to say it, Rita?
I would say so.
So this has been a lot of information, and just to wrap all this up, and of course we're going to be putting this information online. This has been a really quick discussion about, you know, this is 2 weeks of volunteering that 4 people have done, and a lot of learning that's gone along the way. I just think, Mary Kay, is there something that you could add in terms of our practical responsibilities or things that we can do here in the Omaha community to support the immigrants either at the border or who have arrived here in Nebraska?
Yes, ma'am.
I knew you would.
I don't think the majority of the people of the United States are hostile. I think they just absolutely don't know what the situation is. So I plead with people to get self-educated about this. There is so much information on the internet. Get the myths and the facts and get them straight. And one of my thing is, I'm not very talented. Well, I don't speak Spanish, so therefore, there's no therefore. Do you know your congressperson? Do you contact your congressperson and express your concerns? People say, oh, I don't want to talk about them because I don't know the House bill number. And you don't have to do that. All you have to do is call. If you don't want to talk to them, call them at night when you get the recording.
Say that again. Yeah, say that again for people who I think are nervous about calling their elected officials for any reason. So you're afraid that, you know, your actual senator is going to pick up the phone and ask you a detailed question about this. That doesn't happen, right, Mary Kay?
Well, I have had quite a bit of experience, and I have not talked to only one. They have their staff talk to you. But the staff, in my experience, both here and in Washington, are not real excited. They're just doing the work that they do for their senator or representative. So what I'm saying is, you are not going to be put on the spot of having to defend, well, what's that House bill number? You can say something as plain as, I want the senator to know, I want my congressman to know that I want immigration reform. And so if you're shy about, and my experience of even talking to the staff is they don't ask you very many questions. We'll let the senator know, we'll let this representative know, but it is important because those people who are just taking down that information, they count. They count who call, how many calls, how much pressure. So that's something we can do.
And we can share in the links below the find your representative. We can share a link below for you to find your representative if you don't know.
All you have to say is, my name is Mary Kay Maher. I'm a constituent of you. I am deeply concerned about the status of immigration and I want immigration reform, period. I mean, it's not very hard. Another specific is volunteer work. And volunteer work is not just going down to the border. There is so much other work that's connected with migration and immigration, and that's here. And what I want to reemphasize what Rita said is, the border is here. It's right in our own neighborhoods and in our own cities. And when you think about volunteer work, you don't need Spanish necessarily. Those agencies that are working with them, they have lots of things that need to be done that volunteers could do. So you say, I got half a day, I can do something. What do you need done? I think collaborating with established local groups, for example, in Omaha, we have the Lutheran Family Services, the Legal Aid, and the Refugee Settlement Program. I think another thing is, and I'm not disparaging this, money donations are important. So I think another thing which we just had a very good example of is write articles for the local papers. We really need more local voices. And there's many documentaries and there's available speakers. And I'm willing to speak. I have mouth will talk. So those are some of the more practical, everyday thing. But you know, we have to ask the question of them being our brothers and sisters who are here, not at the border. And what is the border that's here in our city or in our church or in our community that's separating us, that they don't somehow belong to us or we don't belong to them? So those are little ads on.
And of course, we can post that list of recommendations here in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your recommendations, both Rita and Mary Kay. I think that they're both incredibly valuable, especially when you're talking about ways to get involved locally, which there are plenty of ways, and we'll post those here in a few minutes. Now, I know we're about 6-7 minutes over time. So quickly, I just wanted to ask, just to wrap all of this up, maybe I can start with Sister Rita. Can you talk to me about your main takeaways? You spent 2 weeks, you've done this multiple times over. You're aware of the situation in Omaha. What are your takeaways from this particular trip or this particular experience?
They are always very humbling experiences, and I don't speak Spanish, and that can be, it can feel like a block. But what comes through is you communicate with us with hands up, with thumbs up, with hand clapping. You can welcome them. Hand motions, just showing them where to go. And even though we had masks on, you could feel their openness, their deep trust in us that we will certainly work for their benefit. I can remember, I was so deeply touched by a young family. There was a crucifix in the back of this one large room. And one evening I walked in there and there was this family, the mother and the father kneeling, and they had 2 little toddlers. They were not fussy, the toddlers, but those 2 parents knelt there, not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, well over a half hour. To me, that witnessed to the courage they have in carrying horrendous burdens, but turning to the person that gives them the strength, the person they trust, and they find their courage. So I received so much from their presence. I only hope they receive some presence from mine.
And could I ask, Mary Kay, do you have any takeaways that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, my greatest takeaway from this experience, but I've had some other experiences too, they're always different, but for me, I think it was like a booster injection. Maybe that's my medical background, to continue this long walk together with our migrant brothers and sisters. I'm a long hauler and I need boosting. I need prayer and I need support and I need other people who do this with me. And we are not only at the border, we are at our cities and neighborhoods, in our beef packing, trimming trees, picking up garbage, just like Rita said. And in these experiences, I've always received more than I've ever given, and I've always learned so much more not in words as much as in their humanity that I experienced with them. So I'm left with 3, maybe 4 major ponderings. And one is to expand the deep reality that we truly are brothers and sisters and called to be that in action. And my second one is to probe and act more deeply in my recognition of the critical question: what are the root causes and what do we do? The third one is to help other people and raise their awareness of root causes. And I think the fourth is to remember we do have power to influence and make changes. And we need to claim that. But my constant haunting is I'm going to sum this up in a little poem. Sometimes poetry says more than words, and like art. Why do people leave home? The best answer I've seen to this is a poem by the name of Home, H-O-M-E, Home. It was written by a Kenyan-born Somali poet, Warsan Shire. And I highly recommend, it's a very long poem, it's a very hard poem, it's a very real poem. But I really encourage people to read the whole one. I will just read the first verse. Home. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark.
Well, thank you so much, Sister Mary Kay. And of course, we'll post a link to that full poem below here right after we're finished. It's just remarkable words. And we've gotten some comments, including from somebody from El Paso that just completely agrees with what you were saying. They said, Mary Kay said it exactly right, that everybody needs to hear about not why they come, but why would you leave? So I'm grateful that you mentioned that. I'm grateful for the people who have commented, and we'll put this all out online here soon. And let me just say, thank you all for being with us today. We'll post all of this on our website at NotreDameSisters.org, including a little bit more of the reflections from Sister Rita and Mary Kay that they wrote about from their trip. You can also find Margaret Hoarty's and Tom's article there at our website. And then, of course, if you want to see more information from us, you can follow us on Facebook, or you can go to our website to sign up for our newsletter. I just wanted to mention quickly that June 20th is not only Father's Day, which we're all very excited about, but June 20th is also International Refugee Day. And this is the anniversary of the 1954 Refugee Convention being signed internationally. And therefore, this is the anniversary where refugees and asylum seekers actually had international human rights. Mary Kay was speaking earlier about the right to claim asylum. And June 20th marks the anniversary where we commemorate that exact right when that happened. So I hope that you pray with us on June 20th. We have a prayer specifically for fathers who are seeking refuge, who are seeking refugee status in order to save the lives of their children and pray for their safety. So we hope that you come back with us and pray with us on that day. Contact us over Facebook, look at our blogs. You can reach out over the website to reach out to Rita or Mary Kay or myself for more information. Otherwise, you have a great afternoon. I hope that you enjoyed learning with us, and we'll post more information soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.